Srikumar, I'll put you on the spot here a little bit.
Hmm.
We know that you got a physics degree at Delphi University, looked into the nature of reality, and then came to the United States. Tell us a little bit more about your childhood, about growing up in India, what that was like, and how that may have caused you to be the giant in thinking that you are.
Okay. So I grew up in India. My father was a government bureaucrat, and my mother was a homemaker. We were not poor, but there wasn't a whole lot of discretionary cash lying around. So basically, you didn't go around and buy things because you thought, hey, it's a good thing to have, or things on a whim. It's very, very carefully budgeted. And among other things, for example, was books. I always loved books, so my father made me a member of several libraries. But we didn't buy books. In India in those days, you didn't buy books because books were expensive. And if you bought a book, then you treated it with respect, which means you didn't mark it up, you barely creased it, you make sure the pages weren't folded, and so on. So I had a lot of respect for books, respect, quote unquote, and respect basically meant that you kept it as new as the day you bought it. So very different now. Now I read a book, if it's a book that I value, it's it's dog-eared. I highlight extensively, I run on the margins, I put other things that work. So there's been a sea change in my thinking, if you will. The reason I mention all of that is that when I got a science talent scholarship, it came with a book grant. And with my very first book grant, I went out and got the Feynman Lectures in Physics, which is a classic. And I still have those books that I purchased, must have been a good 60 years ago, and I still have them on my shelf. So that was the environment I grew up. But the more important point is that my mother was a very spiritual lady, and there were a whole bunch of really important spiritual figures who were a part of my life growing up. Mahesh Yogi, for example, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is an international figure, was a regular part of my house. Of course, I just knew him as an uncle type figure with a white beard who, gave me cookies or candies or so on. This was in the days before he was discovered by the Beatles and Mia Farrow and became an international celebrity. So people like that, many of the direct disciples of Ramakrishna's direct disciples, they were all enlightened beings, and I just knew them as people who I could play around with. But they were immense spiritual personalities, and I have to believe that what they radiated in some way shaped me. And it's much later that I recognized their greatness and what they had to contribute to mankind. And they were just part of my life growing up.